Hey everybody, Jessica Henry Gray here. I'm really excited to have you back today to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to demonstrate how to paint a fall scene with these beautiful fall colors. The sun is gorgeous and it's a lovely day. So we are going to jump in, and I've got a larger canvas here that is 12 by 24. So I'm going to show you how to paint this and we'll get all set up here. All right, let's get going. Hey everybody, Jessica Henry Gray here, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm excited to have you back here today. I've got this gorgeous scene out behind me here, and the colors are stunning. It is the height of fall season here in Ohio, and we've got an unusually warm day at about 75 degrees. So I'm gonna jump in and get plein air painting this, and remember, I love your comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy this video. All right, you guys, let's get going. Now today I have a linen canvas that's 12 by 24, a little bit bigger than normal, and I just really wanted to capture that scene. All my colors are the same as normal, and I will show you those here in just a minute. Okay guys, let's do some plein air painting today. Today I'm using my James Coulter easel because I have a larger canvas, and this holds it better. It's art box and canvas. So the colors I have: titanium white, cadmium yellow medium. I have added cadmium red today, red light, just because there's some beautiful fall colors. It's not mandatory, but I do like it when I want to paint some gorgeous fall colors. Yellow ochre. Oh, I have some Indian yellow. I don't know that I'll use it. It was just there. So, burnt sienna, ultramarine blue, phthalo green, and alizarin crimson. I've got my odorless mineral spirits here and a little bit of linseed oil in my container. So that is all I'm going to use. I've got some paper towels and my brushes and a little bit of hot apple cider. So I am all set. All right, so I'm gonna put this on quiet and do a voiceover so you can see what I'm doing while I'm painting. I am going to start out this beautiful scene with a thumbnail sketch. Now when I get to a place, the first thing I want to do is sort of define exactly what it is about the place that I enjoy. And I loved the view from looking down the river that way with the light shining through the trees and hitting that distant cliff. And so that was what I wanted to play with. So you can kind of be overwhelmed with all the detail and information of a place, but you really want to boil it down to its simplistic design and idea that you really love the most. So as I'm working out this sketch, I'm just isolating where I want my darkest values in relation to the lightest light and the medium tones. Most of the canvas will be fairly medium in value. However, there's where I want my darkest darks and my lightest lights. Really, our eye is always drawn to the area of the greatest contrast. So in this context, I really wanted to draw the eye deep into the painting. And so I used the contrast of those trees with the light of the background to draw the eye in. All right, so I toned the canvas with a little more burnt sienna and yellow ochre. It's a little darker than I actually prefer. I don't mind it being this color, but because if some of it shines through, then it just has that nice glow. I probably would have wiped a little bit more off, but it's okay. So now I just take a little bit darker mixture, and using my thumbnail sketch as a reference guide, I'm laying in where all of the key factors of my composition are going to go. So I have my trees, and I'm laying in the dark strength of those trees first after I sort of sketch in the design, the layout. Putting those anchors in helps me to identify where I'm going to go with the strength of the other values in the picture. So most of the canvas is a middle tone already, which worked in my favor for the fact that most of the canvas is middle tone anyway in my value sketch. So my darks go in first, and then I will wipe out where the lighter values are going to go. As I'm wiping out these lighter values, they're not as white as I'm going to get them and as intense for the finished product. But overall, the idea is there, and I can work with that. And even just what you want to do is when you've finished your lay-in, your sketch on the canvas, make sure to step back and look at it. If it's not reading compositionally, then you need to keep working at it. But you can tell a good composition by how it feels. If it balances, if it has decent amount of interest and you don't have anything too close to the edge, those are key factors for composing a picture that you want to take into consideration. So I'm beginning now with color, and I'm just doing a light ultramarine blue and white for the sky. Right now I'm working on the darker color of the clouds. When I paint skies and I'm painting clouds, I begin with the darker value that I see in the clouds, and then over the top of that I will add a bright white with a teeny bit of yellow, and that, you can see, it just gives it the illusion of sunlight hitting those clouds. And so that's it for the clouds in this picture. I didn't want to do too much, but it was important that I had some of the sky showing because, again, it contributed to my values, my design composition. The eye is drawn to the area of the greatest contrast, so I had to have that white sky with the dark trees to draw the eye in there. Also, it made sense to see the reflections that were going to end up being in the water to have the sky showing so that you could have an obvious source of that light. Those trees in the background, the longer you look at trees in the distance, the darker they become. So you have to keep moving your eyes around the picture to get a better perspective of how dark something or light something actually is. So I just tried to keep those a little bit lighter and push the lighter value of the trees on the top of that cliff. And just working on the cliff wall now, I painted it in, and then I come back later and just lighten it a little bit. It seemed a little bit heavy. And again, I wanted that to have a unified sense of connection, the cliff, the trees, the skies, because the background in anything has to stay connected. It has to be supporting and not draw the eye. So if I had the contrast too strong on that cliff, it would have drawn the eye, and that's not where we wanted the eye to look, not on that cliff. The trees and the river, that was the most important part. My concept for this painting was to really capture that glow and that feeling of, just that we feel when we look at the rivers. What I want to talk to you about now is my palette. So I use alizarin permanent, phthalo green, burnt sienna, ultramarine blue, yellow ochre, and cad yellow medium with titanium white. I want to show you this here, so pause this if you feel inclined. This is a mixture of each of those colors in varying degrees. And I've added white to show you how to get some of these colors that I'm doing. And then I also wanted you to see this here about greens and the percentage: yellow ochre, cad yellow medium, phthalo green, and just how to make some stunning greens for your paintings. 70%, 30% of this and that. So pause here and take notes if you want. Those I use in my workbooks and for the Renaissance Academy and other places where I've taught. I made some diagrams like that just to demonstrate mixing colors. All right, so now what I'm doing at this point is when you have a passage here like this grove of trees that's complicated, there's lots of colors, you squint down at it and you take the furthest away value that's darker, muted, and that's what you block in first. At this point, I'm just blocking in that distant value that's sort of darker and more muted. Over the top of this, I will be painting in the brighter, pretty leaves that we see, but you have to go to the furthest away layer to begin the process. So on that side of the bank, I started with the darker green, and now I'm working on the darker green shadows that tucks into the forest floor. And over the top of this, you'll see I'll do some more cascading lights, but for a while, this painting feels blotchy, sort of, but you just keep plowing forward, because you can, as you work through the challenges of a complicated scene, it'll start to tie together, but you have to get this foundation correct. And so as I'm working here, and you can see the picture on the left, the values that I'm trying to grab, the darker values of greens and olives, and of course I had to punch up that cliff just a little bit more. It was too dark and muted. That's just what I'm blocking in. Don't worry about detail. In fact, more detail doesn't make a finer painting. You only add detail as it suits your concept and as it contributes to the final product. If it doesn't contribute, don't add it. A lot of times people think that if they could just get in more detail that their painting would be better, and that is just not the case. Getting the blocked in value masses correct and the color masses correct, that is the key ingredient to creating a strong painting. So you get there by squinting and getting in those big shapes. If your values are off, it doesn't matter how much detail you put in. It's not going to read accurate, and it's not going to read pleasing to the eye or compositionally accurate. So what I'm doing here is I'm just taking a little bit of yellow ochre, cad yellow, and I did put on some the alizarin crimson with the yellow. Cadmium yellow will make almost a cadmium. It's red. It's very bright. So I use some of that to mix in with the yellow to create some of those orangey, peachy tones in that passage of forest trees. Blocking in just where I see them. Always cognizant, too, of the depth of dark under the foliage, the deepness of the forest. At this point, I am sort of tightening up the composition and pulling in the darker values where I see them in the water, reflected in the water from the bank and the rock. Everything that is reflected in the water is going to appear a little bit darker in value. The darks of the trees, the shadows in the water, they're going to be just a little bit darker. The sky is a little darker. It's just the nature of reflections. All right, and I'm back now up to the trees, just again cleaning up some of these passages where the colors meet with other colors. And I'm asked often, how do you keep paintings from becoming muddy? I clean my brush off often and wipe it off, but also when you have color masses meeting other color masses, instead of just blending, you soften the edge where one color meets another color if you need to have it softer in that area. Okay, so now on the bank here of the farther side of the river, I'm putting in a little bit more of a sage chalky green, and just a little bit of cad yellow, yellow ochre, some blue, and then of course hitting my value of the river. I think that the painting really starts to come alive when you put the lightest values in, especially for the river, as the water moves, and without getting that in, it just doesn't feel like it's moving. But so a little bit of white, yellow ochre, ultramarine blue, just the same colors. I feel like I'm saying over and over again, but they're in varying degrees. You can paint so many different things with this palette. The subtleties of a little bit more of this, a little bit less of that, just makes a big difference. So I'm adding some green now to the river, and when I squint down at the river, it's not just the color of the sky and the blue of the water. It's most of what you're seeing are the darker reflections of the trees above. So they're predominantly an olive green as they look into the water, but occasionally you see some oranges. And now I'm pulling out the darker accents of the trees on that side of the river, and how much it helps to really get those value accents in place. It makes a big difference. You always want to be cognizant of where your brushstrokes are going and what they're saying. In this context, I'm painting the river, so I'm thinking about a horizontal brushstroke. I don't want to paint the brushstrokes going the flow of the water. It just wouldn't read accurately, but because water is typically horizontal and it's reflecting a surface of sort of like a tabletop, keep the brushstrokes horizontal, and then you can allow a few on top to go the direction of the river, like the reflections and the sparkles down below, like that. That helps just to create that sparkle on top. But if all the brushstrokes flowed downriver, it wouldn't read accurately. Okay, so now I'm starting to put in some more of the sparkles in the trees and starting to really develop the look of that forest the way I want it to look. little more cadmium yellows, a little phthalo green with the cadmium yellow will give you that sunlit effect on the leaves. I'm using a little bit of alizarin crimson and cadmium yellow to get that brilliant fall orange back there. I love this shot with the leaves falling. It's just such a beautiful day to paint. That's one of the things that I love about plein air painting, is just being out there and enjoying the season, any temperature, any day, whatever the case. Even if it's cold, you can paint inside your car. It's just always a good reason to enjoy and celebrate nature and what it's doing. And so now I'm just working on a few more of the leaves, and I come back through here, even back in my studio, and I add just a few more sparkles to the trees. Oil paint dries darker. So when I brought this back home, I noticed that some of it had dried a little darker shade. So I did pull out a little bit more of the intense bright lights, not all over. You just want to do it in a few places where it really needs it. So now I'm just cleaning up again around the edge. The further in the distance you go with the brushwork, you want to keep it softer and more muted. I don't want to put, just because I can see tiny leaves back there, you don't need them. Squint down at it, and what you see when you're squinting, that's what you want to paint. So just a little bit of the darker, more muted color in there makes the brighter colors really pop. So now these greens, even though we're in fall, there's still some beautiful greens out there. I showed you the picture earlier in this video of just mixing greens. And in this case, I have here some ultramarine blue, phthalo green, a little bit of yellow ochre, and cad yellow. I threw it all in the pot. And in varying shades, you can get different beautiful greens. More blue will give you a little bit more shadowy color green. More cad yellow will give you a little bit more sunlight. A little bit more yellow ochre will give you more of a neutralized green. Add a little bit of white in there and it becomes almost like dead grass if you add more yellow ochre and white. Very important to have in nature. Across the river you could see some of that. The grass was dry or deader grass. So coming back up in here now and pulling out those trees that got lost among the foliage, I'm going to, at a certain point then, you put the trees back in and then you're going to layer over foliage around that. But you have to get the further trees in first, the foliage, and then put the tree trunks over that, and then you layer more foliage over that. So even though they were in place at the beginning, I knew that they'd be there. I also knew that those lines I put on initially were going to get lost. Now the banks on the right side of the river there, those darker values, at the beginning, when I was laying in the values, those were very important as anchors. And so I'm coming back through here now and I'm more clearly defining those darker values because I need them to demonstrate that the bank of that river goes up and there's a nice strong dark shadow there, which is supportive of my composition. Sometimes in the course of when you're working, things get lost, like of course the tree trunks, which we knew that they were going to, but other things like this bank, there's nothing that says you can't go back and pull those in. So, you have to clearly define your thumbnail sketch, get it on, and then don't be afraid to refer back to it and continually, okay, am I hitting the mark? Is this what I originally wanted? And so every now and then I do refer back to my thumbnail sketch and I saw my values were not as nice and balanced as I had originally drawn them. So you have to put them back in. And then I'm trickling the dark values down to where the water meets the land. I like those darker accents along the river too, not just because they were there, but because they also helped to anchor the land into the water. And it made them look wet. So I'm pulling that all the way down. I'm putting in some leaves and a few other critical pieces of information along the water. Things that help identify it as such. As you block in the picture, you go from general to specific. So the water was just a general series of value and color masses. But as it tightens up and starts to identify itself as a river, you can add more detail and more information as you're going along. Like that rock, for example, I really just wanted to keep it angular and 3 simple values, dark, medium, and light. There was no point or reason to add more detail to that rock. The longer you fussy over things like that, the more it can start to look like a potato or a garbage bag. So you want to keep things pretty simple, especially rocks. Nice, strong, angular brushwork. And now I'm just working in some of the ripples and shines in the water. Closer to me, there was more of a violet tone to the ripples. And so I wanted to keep that feeling a little bit more cooler tone. And that had a nice complementary effect to the rest of the orange yellow glow of the scene. So purple is the complement to yellow. And so that's just beautiful when you see it then in nature. Make sure to add that. All right, just laying in a few of the birch trees. They were important to me, especially as they provided more interest in that background passage back there. It's white and yellow ochre. I don't want to just use straight white from the tube, especially for birch trees, unless there's one little tiny shine on it. Lighter gray, the trunks as they came up through the forest floor. Some of the light would filter through the leaves, and so I wanted to hit just a gray hitting those tree trunks back there. Not all of them, of course. And some gray on the branches. Just a few birch trees and the rest were gray. All right, now I've reached that part of the painting where I'm working on the details. A little more of the details. When I squinted down at the scene in front of me, I could see a few more sparkles on the water, and I wanted to get that surface quality in of the water. Water can be challenging because with just the slightest shift in the wind, the surface of the water can look different. So what you have to do when nature is changing the scene before you quite a bit, you have to choose. You just have to select what you like best. So in this river, I liked that I could see some of the reflections from the trees into the water. That I felt that was important. So when the wind had died down and the water didn't have quite such a ripple on it, that's when I selected those moments to grab the color that I could see in the water. And I also wanted those moments for picking out some more of the shines on the surface of the water, exactly where I wanted them. Okay, so now I'm layering in more of the leaves in and around the trees that are there. I'm not really worried about the 475 branches and twigs that I see. What's more important to me are the mass of leaves and foliage that are just serving to make the appearance of being a tree in a forest. So I'm just going through with the corner of my brush and laying in a few of those key details and pieces of information. When I come back to the studio, what I want on my canvas are pieces of information that I couldn't get if I were just to have worked from a photo. And that's one of the reasons I always want to encourage people, no matter what stage you're in your journey in painting, it's always a good time to go out and work from life, work from nature as much as possible. Even if you are just indoors, work from life, grab a salt shaker or banana or something, because you're training your eye to see accurately. Working from photos, you're training your eye to understand how a photograph works. And, the values are not correct, the colors are not correct, and working from life is really the only way to develop your mind to see and understand correctly. Now, I felt that while I was working that these rocks that were in the water, and I had these on my sketch too, that compositionally it was important that those were included in the picture, and I just really loved how they had a sense of leading the eye into the river, into the painting. So I was putting those in with just a darker value first, and then I come back over that with a lighter value just to accentuate where the rocks are. There's slightly different shades of the rocks, but it's not enough to get really fussy over the variances. So I just laid them in where I felt compositionally they were going to best serve my purpose. Now, as I'm finishing up this plein air painting, I'm just hitting the last few spots of detail and information that I wanted to capture from this scene. I knew I was going to go back into the studio and just do a few more pieces of information, hitting up the highlights and so forth, but that pretty much is it for this painting, and I hope that you enjoyed this. And again, don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and I love your comments and questions. And also be sure to stay tuned for, I've got a little bit of a watercolor promo that I'm doing here at the end of this video. I will be doing a watercolor workshop November 5th and 12th. All right, so check out that information. And here's the finished plein air study. And that is as far as I took it out in the woods. And then I go back to my studio, and I will show you here the finished painting in the studio as well. A close-up of the scene and the plein air study. And then this is the finished studio painting. Those colors I hit up a little bit more because they sunk in and got a little drier. And the river, I added a few more sparkles, and that is it. All right, thanks so much for joining me. See you next time. All right, well, that wraps this up. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and we'll go ahead and give plein air painting a try. And I always love your comments, and if you have any questions, go ahead and post them, and be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. All right, you guys, see you next time. Bye-bye. Hey everybody, check out my link below. We're going to be painting this blue jay November 5th and November 12th in my Zoom workshop. So check out the link and be a part. I'd love to have you in my workshop. These are other watercolors. And we're going to be doing a fun, beautiful blue jay. All right, you guys, we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.